All right, thank you, Tim, for being with us today and talk to me and to the students about the topic of pricing. So in class, students learn that some markets, some goods and services, they have high price elastic of the demand and others have low. So from your experience, can you share some examples you have illustrated that concept?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me. It's fun to do this. Um, well, the first thing I would say is the safe assumption when you're a business in the very competitive world that businesses operate in is that pricing is going to be elastic, and it may be more elastic than you even think. Because we compete in global markets, there are many substitutes. So let me give you an example that Amazon learned about this the hard way in early days. When Amazon started, it only sold books. And to gain market share, it was competing against the big offline sellers in the US. That was Barnes and Noble and Borders. And so to do that, it had big discounts on books. And Amazon was growing super fast. It was actually the fastest growing history company. It hit $1 billion in sales, but it wasn't profitable. So in 2000, Amazon's revenue was 2.8 billion, but it had 1.4 billion in losses. The dot-com bubble had burst. There was huge market correction, and Amazon decided instead of just focusing on growth, we got to get to profitability. So it decided we're going to have to decrease these heavy discounts on books. Effectively, decreasing a discount is a price increase because we need to generate more profit. But Amazon miscalculated the elasticity. Amazon had been driving book discounting, and that had been a big differentiator. But as soon as it decreased those discounts, demand dropped significantly. And our competitors took huge advantage of it. What they did is they actually kept the big discounts. They had been matching Amazon on the discounts. Amazon decreased its discounts. They kept discounts. Pricing, Amazon had at that time about 20 million customers. It figured they were loyal customers. They love shopping online. They wanted books delivered to their door. We could increase prices and they would keep buying them. Not true. Demand dropped much more than we thought. And so much so that Amazon reversed the pricing decision in less than 3 months. So the big lesson for Amazon there in early days is you need to be very careful when increasing prices. Price elasticity with price increases might be greater than you think.
That's very interesting. So in theory, we know that some markets have high elasticity and some have low, but based on your experience, most of them consumers are very price sensitive with high elasticity of demand.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely true. At Amazon, I think we learned 3 things about pricing from that price increase. And how consumers think about price. One is that price perception matters. So Walmart is probably a great example of this. People know they're going to get a great price at Walmart. Great price. You go to Walmart's great pricing. People had come to believe that about Amazon before that price increase. We know the pricing's good. And so that perception of low prices is good. And when you increase the price, you can change that perception. But to your question, yes, the price for most consumer goods is elastic, and it's growing probably more and more elastic with the internet and competition. But the third thing we then learned, the big takeaway is that if you are going to increase price, you need to make sure you're increasing the value you provide to the customer. In other words, the price increase needs to come with an increase in value. So assume that pricing is elastic, and maybe more elastic than you think. How customers perceive you when you increase price matters. And if you are going to increase pricing, therefore, you need to increase the value that you provide.
Well, I'm glad you started to talk about value, because in the lecture on pricing strategies, students learn that there are 2 main pricing strategies. One is value-based pricing. The other one is cost-based pricing, sometimes known as cost-plus pricing. So based on your experience in the business world, how does a business actually price its products? What are the factors that it needs to consider when pricing its products?
Right. Well, those 2 things that you taught the students are definitely a huge part of it. What is the cost to make that product or service? What is the unique value you can provide your customers? And then the third piece that you always consider in this highly competitive world is, what is the market price? What's the price of your competition? And to varying degrees, it depends on the type of market and the type of product. All three of these factors come into play for nearly every company's pricing decision. So on the first point on cost, all companies have to consider cost in their pricing decision. First, it's kind of the baseline. We talk about in the product development, the Amazon Way lecture, that you really can't make a product or service unless ultimately you make a profit on it. To be viable, you ultimately have to make money. So even though large companies will sell at cost to get economies of scale, which we talking about with Laura Grube in another interview, ultimately you're going to need to have a profit margin. So cost is a factor. Value is super important. Everybody's trying to differentiate their product with unique features, what's unique about our product, and with brand image. So what emotion do people feel when they think about your brand? Brands like Apple, BMW, when you think of them, they have an emotion attached to them. So what features, functionality you build, and how you build your brand image are great examples. So Apple is probably one of the best. They historically have always priced their products higher than their competition, even though their products aren't really that much different than their competition in terms of basic functionality. But they have cool features and functionality. They make beautiful products, and they're marketed with a brand image that says, if you own an Apple, you're cool. Their original marketing slogan was, think different. If I own an Apple, I'm different. It's funny how hundreds of millions of people can all think they're different when owning the same product, but that's what they built, this unique brand image with unique features and functionality. But then the last factor is really important in the world today, which is how is your competition pricing? So every company has to be aware of their competitors' pricing and think broadly about what are the substitute goods. Even Apple you can see that with the Amazon price increase, that people will change products easily, but they won't only say read different books, they might listen to different music. So substitutes are different. So you really have to think broadly about who is my competition. So even though Apple has always had this premium price, for example, they are conscious of how Lenovo, the largest seller of computers, is pricing. And is that price gap so big that people are going to move? So in short, people think about, when pricing in a business, cost, the value that they provide through features, functionality, and brand image, and how is their competition pricing.
Can you give a specific example of when Amazon price based on value?
Oh, that's a good question. So a big learning from the books increase was Amazon became very conscious of what Jeff said from that. The big learning is trust is hard gained and easily lost. You can really lose customer trust easily. And we lost customer trust with that price increase. So one way to not lose that trust when you increase price is you increase the value before you increase the price, or concurrently with increasing the price. So let's take Prime as an example. It's a great example. Prime launched at $79 a year in the US, and it's twice had two quite large price increases. First to $99 and then $119 per year. But it also added a monthly plan of $13 a month. And since that translates to $156 a year, a lot of people sign up for that. Prime has basically doubled its price over the time since it launched. How did it do that? Well, it launched with what you get with Prime is 2-day shipping. It then added all kinds of other delivery options. Today, you can get next day for free, same day in many places for free. Even the other day, I ordered something on Amazon and I could get it in the next 2 hours for free. So they continue to improve the delivery options. I also, if you're a Prime member, you now get Prime Video. So Prime Video is nearly as competitive as Netflix, included for free. You get Prime Music, which is like Spotify. So all these things that Amazon added, as it added, it increased the value and then said, we're not really increasing the price. We're increasing the value. You're still getting a great price for everything you get. And to help make sure that it's increasing to the right price, what Amazon does, Amazon has hundreds of economists who work for it. It does what's called conjoint studies. And a conjoint study is market research to measure the value that consumers place on a particular feature of a product or service. So in these studies, you combine real life scenarios with the consumers who are part of it and statistical techniques to model how do customers value the product or service to help you market it and set price. So that's a way to increase price with increased value.
So in the lecture on pricing strategy, the students and we discuss an example that is quite different from the world of e-commerce and Amazon. We talk about the home remodeling industry. So it's different because the cost of, it is still very expensive to obtain price information in this industry, right? I mean, the customer and the contractors both have to spend a lot of time to schedule, to meet, to talk about the project, to come up with estimate, to compare estimates. So when all of that is done, you already spend a significant amount of time just to obtain the price, right? Which is very different from the internet where like price information is everywhere. So in such an industry, I do observe some contractors doing value-based pricing while others continue to do cost-based pricing. But I wonder if there can be any kind of new technologies or business practices from the other more competitive world that you have experience in into this industry to make it more competitive, to reduce the cost of obtaining price information?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great example. And yes, the example of home services and contractors, it's definitely not like ordering a book or a phone on the internet, whatever it might be, or your groceries on the internet. It is a difficult industry, but yes, definitely no industry is any longer immune to growing global competition and technological advances. In fact, industries that have relied on the lack of transparency in pricing and lack of competition, I would say are most vulnerable nowadays because a technology company can come along and just displace you with a better, cheaper, more convenient, in Amazon terms, a more customer-centric product. Take the taxi industry. I call it the Uberization of the world. Nearly entirely displaced or fundamentally displaced by an app, Uber and Lyft, in a matter of years. And you're going to see this happen in nearly every industry, every consumer market, and even B2B markets, business to business markets. And by the way, I don't think this is a good thing. I don't necessarily think this is a good thing. This is just the reality of what's happened. So back to your specific question, it's a good example of this because there is a $6 billion company in America, and it's in Europe and growing and will be a global company called Angie Home Services. It has a 1.5 billion in revenue. It's across Europe, across the US, growing very fast. It's still not like ordering on Amazon, but what it does is it facilitates the process of getting home services, and it's going to get better. It's growing very fast in large cities where you have density. So you have the supply both of contractors as well as consumers to make it work, but it will eventually grow just like other things to more rural places and smaller cities. So why is this happening? Again, because anywhere you have inefficiencies in the market, because of technology, because of the internet, pricing information and competition, technology has or will enter that market to make it more efficient, meaning better information, more innovation, to make it more convenient for customers and lower prices.
Well, I'm telling you, as a homeowner, I can't wait for that to happen. I think it's going to be a good thing. It's been very stressful to go through this whole finding contractors. How much does it cost? It's been very painful. I do wish it was just like Amazon, right? Which is so much more convenient. Let's switch gear a little bit. How about the pricing strategy of premium brands such as Louis Vuitton? Because I'm an Asian woman and I know that it's very popular in Asia. I guess A lot of Asian women I know say, I gotta have at least one of that bag, and they have a premium pricing strategy, which
Right.
I think is essentially value-based pricing. Do you have any comments on that strategy?
Yeah, it is. It is. When you look at those three factors of cost, value, and market competition that all businesses take into account, some rely much more heavily on one of those factors. And Louis Vuitton, in your example, as an ultra premium brand, is leaning into value. They've built this luxury brand that only wealthy consumers can afford and are willing to pay large amounts of money. But that said, they also have to take cost into mind. They also have to take competition into mind. So even Louis Vuitton has competitors. There's Gucci bags, there's Fendi bags, there's Burberry bags. Maybe Louis Vuitton matters the most to you, but there's even brands that are more premium than Louis Vuitton. My wife told me about a $60,000 bag that you can buy. So there's always competition. And if you're not conscious of competition, that means that you could at some point, when there's a big difference between, I would say Louis Vuitton and these luxury brands, they're priced artificially high. It's why you have tons of counterfeit Louis Vuitton bags, because there's this huge gap. Somebody can make a bag that looks just like Louis Vuitton, sell it at a much lower price. Now, the other big thing that Louis Vuitton and other premium brands face is they can only get so big, because to afford a bag of that at that price point, they're targeting a rich segment of customers. So they're limited in their capacity to grow based on the size of that segment.
Well, in that case, let's quickly get back to the Apple example that you mentioned earlier. So Apple is also a premium brand. Does it mean that Apple is also limited in its capacity to grow because it's aiming for that premium brand and premium product and premium pricing?
Yes, and people love to use Apple for all kinds of examples, and it is a great example. And yes, it is limited, and it's why they have pivoted their pricing strategy. But let me first say, part of the brilliance of Apple and what Steve Jobs invented there was that no company in history has created a premium brand allure to the extent they have that is scaled over the number of consumers. There are hundreds of millions of people who have Apple devices, and Apple created that with not only a good product, and it is a good product, but there are other products as good. It did it with genius pricing and genius marketing. So genius pricing and marketing based on that value that you've taught the students about. So even though their products are not significantly different than competition, Apple, the other Amazon, Apple has historically priced their computers, phones, and other devices as premium products. They do create, similar to that Amazon example with Prime, they create some cutting edge feature that others don't initially have, though they usually quickly fast follow. But they take that cutting edge feature and build brilliant marketing around it to create a unique, cool brand image where people say, I have to have this phone. And then you get the network effect of everybody wanting this phone. And Apple has grown very large with this strategy. But as said, they still have to take all these factors into account. So with the proliferation of Android phones, I have a very old Samsung Galaxy S7, which is just as good in most feature and functionality as an Apple, but there are even lower priced Android phones. If Apple wants to continue to grow, which frankly, all large companies, their biggest fear is that they stop growing at a rapid rate. They want to continue to grow, which means they have to be conscious of competition. They have now launched the iPhone SE, which is priced in the US $300 lower than their next price point. So only $399. This gives them the ability to begin penetrating lower price segments. So they want to continue to gain share. They have to decrease the price, and they're really struggling. There's lots of debate. Can they continue to maintain their premium allure with that? You talked about Louis Vuitton bags, just one more example. Coach. Coach bags, not quite a Louis Vuitton, but a premium brand for a long time. They entered outlet malls. In the US, there's these outlet malls where you can go for discounted premium products. Coach was really big in outlet malls. They started selling at lower price points, and it, in some people's view, destroyed their brand. They lost the allure of that premium. So that's the risk that Apple has, but with this lower price point. And if they continue to lower it, are they really a premium brand?
All of this discussion has been very fascinating. Do you have any final comments to make on this pricing topic?
Oh, sure. So overall, I think we see a world of increasing transparency. The internet makes information accessible literally at people's fingertips. They can get pricing information, company information, information about substitute products. We live in a truly global world with global supply chains and global labor markets. People manufacture. That iPhone we talk about is made by Foxconn in China. It always has been. It's a Chinese manufactured product with lower cost labor. So people look around the world for global competition in labor and supply. And there are many substitutes, and technology is evolving rapidly. All of this creates huge downward pressure on price. But as I said, this displacement, whether it's Uber of taxis, Netflix of movie theaters, Amazon of Main Street, and we've really seen the acceleration of this with COVID, means that prices being driven down does have an impact, especially on small to mid-sized companies. To get the scale that you need to drive prices down, all our examples, we're talking about large companies, you really have to make huge capital investments. Small and mid-sized businesses can't necessarily do that. And we've seen with COVID, lots of small, mid-sized businesses go out of business. And that does change the character of our community. So I think we as consumers, we ultimately are the decision makers. Do we buy something or not? I think it's an important time to ask ourselves, is price the most important thing? Do I want to continue to push prices down? Or are there other things that matter? Small, mid-sized businesses that make my community better. Sustainability, do they make products that make the world better, that are not greenwashing, but are truly green and sustainable? So I would ask all our students, and they are the people who are going to change the world. They're the consumers of the future. What you value. Ultimately, we talked about in our vision, purpose, mission lecture, the company's about creation of value. And so what do you value as a customer? Do you value your communities? Do you value sustainability? Or is it price alone that matters? So think about that. That would be my final thought.
Thank you. Well, students, we have a class discussion on just that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.